Hey, PokeDad fan club, it's me, PokeDad, and today we're doing another deck profile. I told you that on Tuesday Night Fights, Link Geek and myself were going to take our two decks that we're playing for cities for a test drive. I'm going to battle each other, and so I already showed you my deck. Mine was Mega Mewtwo Y with Zoroark Break, but he wanted to play pretty much just Zoroark Break with some Yveltal sidekicks. So that's what he decided on doing, and he's actually done pretty well at navigating this deck, even though there's some nuances to it. It's not as straightforward as like Night March or other decks. So anyway, let's get right into the deck and we'll talk about all the pieces here. So we play three of Baby Yveltal. This is pretty much probably our best starter because if we go second, we can Oblivion Wing, potentially have some energy in the discard pile, which will allow us to begin charging up any Zorua or Yveltal EXs on the bench, or even another Baby Yveltal, and then allow us to get a Darkness Blade ready for a 100 damage. Now, the one good thing about this deck, Darkness Blade, you have to flip a coin, and if tails, that Pokemon can attack during your next turn. But if you have Zoroark with stand-in and a float stone on, you can then clear that and do Darkness Blade again. So Darkness Blade actually becomes a pretty strong attack in this deck. And it does take a little bit to charge up, but if you have one Yveltal getting another one ready to go, Darkness Blade can become potent. In fact, if you throw on a Muscle Band, it's now can take out a Shaman. So Yveltal is no slouch in this deck, even though we mostly use it for Oblivion Wing. That 30 chip damage at the beginning of the match can just make a difference when we get to the end of the match. So that's what we have Yveltal for. Also, Yveltal really is just a really strong attacker if you're playing Night March, and I expect Night March to be a pretty big thing in cities. So Yveltal Oblivion Wing can, without a Muscle Band, can take out a Joltik or a Pumpkaboo. Um, so it's one of those that you can trade off well with Night March. And then Zoroark itself can still take good knockouts too. So that's what we want to try to do with Yveltal there. Alright, we've moved to Yveltal EX, and this is not a main attacker. This is really a closer. We can use Evil Ball, get a big Evil Ball going to close out the game. If we do start with him, it's still a pretty decent attacker, because for just two attachments, you can begin really hitting hard with Evil Ball. But also, Y Cyclone allows you to hit 90 damage and also put an energy to one of your bench Pokemon. So it allows for a good energy transfer in the deck. One thing to keep in mind is Yveltal, we can put some DCEs on Yveltal and then put Darkness Energy on him, or Oblivion Wing of Darkness Energy on him, and then he's ready to go with a pretty big attack at the end, which can take out maybe the opponent's last EX and hit pretty hard. So Yveltal EX is just one of those there. We don't necessarily always play him, because there are some matches that it's just not good to play him down. Right now, the Raikou Magnezone deck, you would want to be careful about playing him. He probably still is the best matchup against that, simply because Evil Ball, if a Raikou has a ton of energy on him, an Evil Ball can take that out pretty easily. Though you really want to try to target the Magnezone first anyway. Alright, following that, we then go into probably the main attacker of the deck, and that is Zorua, Zoroark, and Zoroark Break. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Zorua. We do play the one that's the Moonless Madness, so that if you start with this one and you have no other resources, you can, at least for a Darkness Energy, use Moonless Madness and confuse the opponent. That might at least delay them a turn, allowing you a little more time to set up. Then Zoroark, believe it or not, Zoroark is that's probably the attack you're going to use more than even foul play. Mind Jack is just one of those attacks that's really, really strong. Mind Jack does 10 damage, but then also 30 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. And when we're in a meta right now where Shamans are being played and Hoopas are being played and Skyfield is being played, Mind Jack can just come in and hit for millions of damage. No, you know what I mean. I mean, for 5 people on the bench, you can hit 160 uh, damage. If there's 8 people on the bench, you're looking at 250 damage. I mean, you can one-shot any mega at that point. So Zoroark, for just a double colorless, does really, really well against many people. Now, the only downside is as it gets later in the game and you've knocked more and more of their Pokemon out, they're less likely to bench more, and so Mind Jack becomes weaker as you knock out more of the opponent's Pokemon. One thing I should mention, I kind of briefly talked about it, is stand in, the ability. It's kind of like Keldeo's rush in. Zoroark can you can put him in the active slot at any time and bring out the person in the active and bring him to the bench. If you attach a float stone on Zoroark, all you got to do, you can stand in retreat. It allows you to clear poison and a special effects, bad effects on your Pokemon. It also clears you know, confusion and status conditions. So anyway, stand in, just really powerful. As you know, in my Mega Mewtwo Y deck profile, I use Zoroark also for that same reason. Alright, and then we play Zoroark Break. Can't really see it, it's kind of sideways, but foul play, it's just it's kind of really mean, but it's very powerful. Choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So, for instance, if we're going against a Primal Groudon, use foul play and you can Gaia Volcano. If there's a stadium play, you can Gaia Volcano for 200. If you're playing Seismitoad, you can either Quaking Punch back or you can Grenade Hammer for 130. Seismitoad normally has to have 2 water and a colorless to be able to do that. Zoroark just needs a darkness. That's it. Or I should say Zoroark Break. So Zoroark Break, very, 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 very strong. However, it is somewhat situational. But it just comes in handy. Like another example is if you're going against Mega Manectric. If Mega Manectric Turbo Volts Zoroark Break, he's not going to be able to knock him out. And then Zoroark Break can Turbo Volt back. So if Zoroark Break gets to do the attack first, and then Mega Manectric comes in and does the attack, and then Zoroark Break does it again, the Mega Manectric will go down first, bar, you know, rough seas or retreats or whatever. So Zoroark Break just really, really strong, and can be used in a lot of different situations. Sometimes, though, it's just not a situation that works well. So that's why we do kind of focus on the Mind Jack, because that's always going to do damage. So that's our Pokemon line. We do play 2 Shamans for setup. Really, with Shaman in the format now, we don't need as many draw supporters, so that allows us to play more one-offs of situational supporters. So let's just talk about those right now. We do play the 4 Sycamore. That is the one draw supporter that we do max out. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know I usually play 4 of these in a deck. There are some situations where I play less, but 90% of the time I'm going to be using 4 Sycamores. Discard your hand and draw 7. We do play 1 Birch. And the reason why I like to have a Birch or a Shauna in the deck is because if you're getting ready to deck out and you have a big hand, Birch or Shauna can save you from decking out. Another reason I like it is there's sometimes situations where you don't want to get rid of what's in your hand with a Sycamore. And so instead of just throwing it all away, we can Battle Compressor Birch and then VS Seeker and use Birch. Now, we do run the risk of only drawing 4 cards, but we also have a 50-50 shot of drawing 7, which would be the same amount as a Sycamore. So, you know, it is a trade-off, but again, it's one of those cards that I use in certain situations, and so it's good just to have one of in here. The other one of we're playing, and you know, I'm missing a card here. It's but let me just go ahead and pull it up. We use one Ace Trainer. Now, if you don't like Ace Trainer, I totally understand. You can also use Judge if you prefer. But we'll go ahead and add Ace Trainer into the deck. Alright, there we go. So we got Ace Trainer here. You can play this card only if you have more prize cards left than your opponent. You get both people shuffle their hands into their deck, and the person and your opponent draws 3, you draw 6. So it can be another good draw supporter, but it is only situational. However, since we're playing 2 battle compressors, again, it's one of those cards we can just throw in the discard pile, and if we need it, we can get access to it. So that's why I play it. Again, you could play Judge. Judge is a little less useful because you only get to draw 4, and it gives them 1 extra card, so they get to draw 4. But I know a lot of people are hyped about that, and a lot of people are playing it. So you know, if you would rather play Judge, feel free to play Judge there. Another one of is Bridget. I almost want to play 2 in this deck because Bridget in the first turn is really good. Search your deck for a basic EX Pokemon or 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So you know, if we start with a Bridget in our hand, we can grab 2 Zorua and a Yveltal. Or if we already got a Zorua in the active, we can play 2 Yveltal and a Zorua. Or even at the late game, if we have to use it, you know, we can at least grab an Yveltal EX and put it on our bench. The one thing I should remind you though is this is not Pokemon Fan Club. So Pokemon Fan Club, you get to pick 2 Pokemon basics, whether they're EXs or not, and you get to put them in your hand. Whereas with this card, you have to put them straight to your bench. So that means if you try to put a Shaman to your bench, you will not be able to use the setup ability because that specifically says it must come from your hand. Whereas with Pokemon Fan Club, you can indeed grab the Shaman EX and grab something else and then place it to your bench. So for that reason, you may want to play Fan Club instead. But this deck is, you know, pretty consistent. I feel like Bridget's a little bit better here for us. Though we may test that a little bit and see if Fan Club is indeed a little better. Another one that we play is Giovanni Scheme. It's just another small draw supporter. I do like the fact that you have 2 choices here. You can draw cards until you have 5 in your hand. We really don't want to be using that too often, but it is possible that, you know, we get stuck with just a Giovanni and maybe another card, and being able to play it could, you know, kind of bust us loose and get 4 new cards or even a couple new cards. I've seen someone play Giovanni Scheme for just a couple cards, which then landed an Ultra Ball, which then landed a Shaman, and before you know it, you were rolling again. So Giovanni Scheme could be useful. But in this deck, there are situations, especially if we run into Megas, where we can't do as much damage as we would like to. That 20 extra damage, I mean, when you add a Muscle Band and then you add Giovanni Scheme on, you're now doing plus 40 to whatever the normal attack would be. So now, like Mind Jack, if there's 5 on the bench, you're doing 160. With a Muscle Band, you're doing 180. And so that's usually enough to knock out an EX. But what if there's only 4 on the bench? You have a Muscle Band, so you have enough to Mind Jack for you know, 130. Muscle Band puts you at 150, and then Giovanni puts you at another 20, which is that 170 mark, which is enough to you know, possibly take another KO on an EX. And if you could do two EX KOs and trade off, you know, 1 Zoroark or even 2 Zoroark, you're doing really good because you're ahead in the prize race at that point. So we play one of those. Again, this might go in the discard pile with the battle compressor and just be a situational thing where we VS secret back out. Another thing we use is one Hexmaniac. Hexmaniac is just when you come across walls or Vileplume, it's just, you know, invaluable, especially if you're coming against Aegislash EX, or if you're going against Beautifly or Pyroar. You know, we have ways to get around that and hit each of those walls, but Hexmaniac is just really useful so that you don't have to worry so much about having special energy attached against Aegislash. And also it can stop opponents' main strategies, like if they're using a Bronzong variant or a Aromatisse variant, where they use that ability. Hexmaniac can disrupt that ability for one turn, which might be enough for them to not be able to play their cards. And even Hexmaniac on turn one can be really, really powerful, because then they don't get to use their Shamans, which is when most Shamans are used on turn one. And so then Hexmaniac keeps them from setting up like they want to. So Hexmaniac, another one of, and again, it might be something we just throw in the discard pile. Any of the one ofs might be for that purpose, and then we'll just come and VS Seeker them out. Skyla, I mentioned in my last video that I wasn't a big fan of Skyla, but I've really changed my tune. Skyla can become a draw supporter if you just grab an Ultra Ball, which then grabs a Shaman. So it becomes this draw supporter. It also can become a, if you need a muscle band to finish off that 20 damage to knock someone out, escape rope to get out of, you know, a sticky situation, you know, grab the super rod, or grab a VS Seeker to grab a different supporter, or you can even grab a different supporter. So it allows you to grab just whatever you need at the right time. So I just love Skyla, at least a one of. I think most decks should probably be running one of Skyla, just because it is such a flexible and versatile card in many of the decks. Alright, with that being said, well, I forgot one, Lysander. I'm not going to spend too much time, because you know my saying is Lysander wins games, and it does. We play 2 Lysander, and if you've seen any of my decks, they typically have 2 Lysanders in them. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his active Pokemon, Lysander someone up to finish the game, or take a knockout on a Shaman, get some prizes. So that's why we play Lysander. Alright, looking at the stadium now, at first we played Shadow Circle, which removed the weakness of dark type Pokemon, or at least Pokemon with dark energy attached. We changed that to Faded Town, because if there's any place where this deck could struggle and not do as much damage, it's probably against Mega decks. And so Faded Town, even just being able to put 20 damage counters, or 2 damage counters on Mega Evolution Pokemon in between turns, and if they can't change the stadium right away, that stuff just keeps adding up real quick, and that can be you know, help win the game. That 20 extra damage or 40 extra damage from the stadium can really make a difference. I feel like this matches up pretty well against most stage 1s and even EX decks, but Megas can kind of give us trouble, so that extra 20 damage can really make a difference in the end. Alright, so let's go on to our item line. I've already talked about Battle Compressor a little bit, so we're going to we play 2 of them mainly to get trainers that we need. We can get a Sycamore if we have a VS Seeker and a Battle Compressor in our hand, and we just have a terrible draw. We can Battle Compressor a Sycamore in the discard pile and then VS Seeker it out. We can get any of those trainers, so Bridget or Ace Trainer or whatever, put them in the discard pile for later. Lysander can be there for later. So all of that, very, very useful cards, very useful card Battle Compressor is. Also, we can put the dark energy in, a couple of them in, so that we can Oblivion Wing and begin loading up our bench with darkness energy, so we can use it as an energy accelerator, so it'll help us in that regard. We play 1 escape rope, even though we're using Zoroark and the stand-in ability, and we're using float stones, it's really good to just have one out. And also, sometimes escape rope can bring something up that your opponent doesn't want to bring up. Maybe there's a shaman on a bench, and then we can use Zoroark to retreat with the float stone anyway, and then KO that shaman. So it can kind of work as like a, I like to think of it as a mini Lysander, but it also can be used as a switch too. So escape rope can be useful in that regard. All right, we play one Professor's Letter. We don't want to get lose an energy drop, so Professor's Letter just keeps the consistency, making sure that we're able to get an energy drop. And then sometimes, if we already have energy, we can Professor Letter 2 energy and then Ultra Ball them away, and then we again can Oblivion Wing those energies back on. So Professor's Letter is really nice. Alright, so the next one is Super Rod. We can shuffle 3 of any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from our discard pile back into our deck. So we can reuse Zoroark, or if maybe we had to Sycamore some pieces away, we can bring them back into the deck. Very useful card for that purpose. We've got 2 Trainer's Mail. Again, this just is a consistency card to help us find what we need in our deck. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you may reveal a trainer card you find there. Put it in your hand and shuffle the other cards back in the deck. 4 Ultra Balls to help us find our Shamans, or help us to get an Yveltal, or maybe we have a Zorua and we need to get a Zoroark, or we have a Zoroark and we need Zoroark Break. Ultra Ball allows us to grab those. So that's why we have the Ultra Balls. We play 4 VS Seeker. Again, we're using so many 1-ofs supporters that we need to have VS Seeker to be able to grab this exact supporter we need in any particular situation. So we play 4 of those. Alright, finally we play 2 Float Stones. Again, that typically goes on a Zoroark so that we can use the stand-in and then retreat to clear conditions, but it could also possibly go on something else if we needed it to, just to retreat them. Muscle Band gives us 20 extra damage, so it's a great damage modifier, enhancer I should say, so we use that. And then for our energies, we play 7 darkness energies, and we play 4 double colorless, so we play 11 energies here, and I feel like that's a good balance. I've played it with 6 and 4, and it just felt like there was not enough darkness energy to go around, so we bumped it up to 7, and that seems a little more balanced. If you are fearful of that, you could even go to 8 and then drop something out of here, but there's so much good stuff in here that I really didn't want to go to 8, so I feel like 7 is a very healthy balance in this deck. Anyway, guys, this is the Zoroark Break deck profile. Hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and put the comments below. Tell me what you like most about this deck. Anyway, this is PokeDad signing off, and we'll talk to you later next time. Bye.